Niall Stanage is here, White House columnist for The Hill. Welcome. It's glad to have you back.
Good to see you.
Why is Benjamin Netanyahu wrong, in your opinion?
Because this is not about rewarding terrorism.
Okay.
And it's not fair, Leland, to say that the nation of Palestine is made up of the people who did the things in that video. Now, for Ireland and Norway and Spain, I presume, it's not about rewarding terrorism. It's about rebuking an Israeli reprisal assault that has killed 35,000 people, displaced 80% of the population, caused, according to Cindy McCain, hardly a left-wing radical, a full-blown famine in the north. There is quite
You're saying the north of Gaza.
outrage about that.
No, and look, I think reasonable people can agree that what is happening in Gaza is awful at every turn, and there are a lot of Palestinian civilians for whom it is horrific. Some have been killed. The question is, where does the blame lie for that? Palestinian views of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. 72% support the October 7th massacre. 57% of Gazans and 82% of Palestinians in the West Bank support Hamas, which I think we can all agree engaged in terrorism on October 7th. How does recognizing a state that will undoubtedly be run by a terrorist organization that engaged in the attacks of October 7th bring about peace?
Who's the Israeli National Security Minister?
I'm sorry, where are you going?
Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is convicted in Israeli courts of supporting terrorism and inciting racism. Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, suggested that there should be, his words, the total annihilation of 3 cities in Gaza, including Rafah, recently. These people are extremists by any measure. And when we say stand with Israel, you're talking about standing with, by far, the most extreme government in the history of the state of Israel.
But I guess for some reason I didn't hear an answer to my question, which is how does recognizing a state of Palestine that at this point would be run by Hamas in a state, a Palestinian population, if you want to call it that does not overwhelmingly want a two-state solution and overwhelmingly supports a terrorist organization.
Mr. Netanyahu has ruled out a two-state solution. The foreign minister of Norway, let me finish. The foreign minister of Norway today, Leland, said Norway previously didn't recognize a Palestinian state because it believed negotiations would lead to a two-state solution. The foreign minister now says we have lost faith in that happening because Israel has no interest in it happening.
So if we put up a map of the Middle East, and you may be right that Israel doesn't have a interest in a two-state solution as it exists in our mind. I spent 4 years there. I never figured out how it could work, of turning Gaza and the West Bank into a two-state solution. Obviously, and if you think about what borders the Gaza Strip before 1967, the Gaza Strip was part of Egypt. West Bank was part of Jordan. The Palestinian cause has been an invention since then.
That's Leland. But come on,
you're going to say 1948. I'm going to say 1967. This would be my question: why, from Norway, Sweden, Ireland, and all these other countries, don't we hear about Egypt, which is blocking any aid going into Gaza, or about Jordan, which could very easily take Palestinian refugees, if you want to call them that, from the West Bank?
Because those nations, including Ireland, think that that suggestion that Jordan or Egypt should take Palestinian refugees would in fact be the elimination or vaporization of the idea of a Palestinian nation. The suggestion there is that they should be absorbed into other countries and cease to be Palestinian. And most Irish people don't think they should cease to be Palestinian.
How much of this, and I think it's a fair question, especially as it relates to Ireland, that there was a unique link between the Palestinian cause and the Irish Republican Army through the Troubles in Ireland?
Well, I mean, if we want to talk about the parallels in Ireland, the reason that there
I'm just saying if there's a reason for the support.
Yes, and it is empathy about military occupation and subjugation by a larger neighbouring power, as Israel has been, as you're well aware, in illegal occupation of the West Bank for more than 5 decades.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.